This is JF. We're always looking for people with an interest in radio, either presenting your own show or being on the technical side. Become a volunteer now. Head to our website at j-air.com.au. Follow the Get Involved link and click on Become a Volunteer Now.
We're all volunteers at JAIR. Nobody gets paid. We all do it because we love doing it. If you'd like to speak to us on the telephone, we do have a telephone. We've given up the tin cans and the piece of string ages ago. We're now in the modern era. So you can call us on 90692086 and you can speak on air, or you can send a message via SMS. What does SMS stand for? Short message service.
I think you're right, yeah.
0404556988. If you'd like to join us up as a member, you can go to our website, www.j-air.com.au, and follow the prompts to the membership page. $54 a year, it's a matzia, and it helps keep the radio station young and vibrant and running. Send money, quick. Now, our first segment of the day is The Lives of Others. We're going to talk about the film Revenge, Our Dad the Nazi Killer, which is showing at the Jewish International Film Festival over the next couple of weeks.
And I was privileged, Gary, last Sunday to be a guest at the premiere screening of this movie, thanks to Sam and his brother John. I noticed you spell your name Jon. Oh, that's unusual. Not John, but you're known as Yehiel.
I'm known as Yehiel, apart from old friends. My wife still calls me John, and the name John, Jon, is what I found on my birth certificate when I got my first passport. So I like that.
I like it too.
I dropped the H. Yeah. Saves a lot of ink. So in the studio at the moment we have Yehiel Grenimann and his brother Sam Green, who are subject of part of the movie, and they're going to tell us about how they become
movie stars.
Movie stars.
Yes, and what a great... I recommend everybody go and see this movie. Fascinating history, together with the family footage in colour from old 8mm and 16mm movies. That really makes the movie. It's just, I think it's 110 minutes total.
101.
101 now.
This is on the publicity on the website.
Oh, 101.
101.
Okay. 9 minutes I won't argue with.
It's in English and it's directed by Danny Ben Moshe.
Yeah.
And it's classified 15 plus. Unclassified 15 plus.
What does that mean?
I think you have to rate all the films that are shown in public. It means it doesn't have a classification. It's not a horror film, it's not a pornographic film, it's not an X-rated, not an R-rated.
So we've got 3/4 of the
historical documentary.
Yeah, we've got 3/4 of the Green brothers in the studio. The other
2/3.
2/3. Oh, that's right.
No wonder we haven't won the lottery. No wonder.
Now the third member would be busy at this stage of the day, Dr. Jack Green.
In this clinic, probably.
Yeah, he's the youngest out of the three. And interesting fact in the film that Dr. Jack was born when Boris, your father, was 53 years of age. Well, and also we'll tell listeners about John being the eldest, 72, are you? 70 years of age?
72.
72, and Sam, the younger boy.
99.
And soon, next year, the big 70.
Oh, yeah.
January the 2nd. Correct?
be a couple of copies for everyone coming over.
Mazel tov. Yom Haledet Shivim. Sam, we're going to have a big celebration.
Let me read something.
It happens that my wife Debbie was born on the same.
Exactly the same day.
Really?
So it's in the time. Let's talk about the film.
Yeah, let's get into it.
In the publicity blurb on the website, it says about the film Revenge, Our Dad the Nazi Killer. In the late 1940s, Holocaust survivors emigrated to Australia via boat. On these same boats were thousands of Nazis and Nazi collaborators from the Baltic and other states, some of whom were given safe passage by the Australian authorities despite their known history of war crimes. That's a good lead into the film.
A little shocking bit of information.
When three Melbourne brothers, Jack, John and Sam, stumble upon a family secret, they embark on a journey to uncover the truth.
The MS. Correct, the MS.
That's where you come in,
Yeah.
Sam.
Well, at my end of things, the story starts with writing. I wrote a novel about 2008. It was published called Far Away From Where, which, amongst other things, about a third of it is the boat journey from Europe of DPs, refugees, to Australia, and there's a murder on that boat. And there's a character who's central in that story called Bora, who's based on Boris, who's based on my dad, and he was a partisan. And writing that book led me to start bringing up memories. It was fiction, but in fact it was about a guy killing Nazis in Germany.
Based on truth.
Yeah, it was based on what I'd heard from my dad. I have an MA in Holocaust Studies. Also, I'd look for my dad in footnotes and in books, whatever. And one of my conversations with my brother Jack, I told him I remembered something about meeting in our home, people speaking Yiddish. Ich learned a bisschen Yiddish, I understood, overheard, we weren't allowed in the room, and they were very upset about Nazis in Australia. And then I remembered that my dad went up to Sydney and I found the body in the Parramatta River. I told Jack that, and Jack was shocked. He's a lot younger.
At that stage, your dad was only implicated. It's the big word here.
Well, there's no proof.
No, but this is where
timing is everything. Some of the tap dance in different ways.
We don't want to give too much away of the movie, but the film goes and traces your late father, Oliver Schollem's background from the war and how he actually set up this brigade of partisans. And after the war, this is the key thing, they continued to roam the forests in Belarus, as it was known then, and hunt down...
Belarus.
Yeah.
White Russia.
Hunt down Nazi killers.
Russia.
Trained squads, which as the movie shows this, how they hid and actually achieved a lot of success in their favour. Such was the power of Boris Green and these other chaps. And
he said, my father said everything was just timing. He was in a position to do where others weren't in a position to revenge or pick up arms. And
well, John, let's tell how many were slaughtered from the Grenimann family, which brought about this intensity to get to the revenge. A big family of 14, I believe.
There were 9 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
So 2 survived, my dad and his older brother.
Fimmer, who gets a big role in the movie.
Boris and Fimmer.
We went with the movie to Vilna, or Vilnius as they call it, and looked for the house in which there were a lot of Grenimanns, because it was a very big extended family.
Let me tell the listeners that your Zayda, your grandfather, was a Rav.
Yeah, I'm named after him, Yehiel.
Now you're a Rav as well, so you're following the footsteps of the tradition.
Yeah, Shulamit, Yehiel's wife, was from Vilna, and we didn't go to Belarus. I went to Belarus previously to my dad's shtetl and said El Malei Rachamim and lit a candle with Jack. This is after these conversations. We went on a roots tour, which was pretty challenging emotionally. We didn't go back there. There was COVID with the film. It was COVID, and also there were problems with the dictatorship in Belarus. There were repression of democratic movement at the time. So the best the film crew could do was take us back to Vilna, where the family was originally from, and some of the family were still living at the time of the Holocaust.
Actually, we go back to Vilna with the Vilna Golan.
Vilna Golan.
There is a thought. Jack argues with me on that.
No,
My dad said we were related or descendants of.
Yeah, I met some of the rabbis in Jerusalem who told me that they married one of our family, the Vilna Golan, married a Grenimann. But the Grenimann that was there was a study partner, they said. So they studied in the Talmudic scholars that they were.
A very brief story why my name is Grenimann and not Green. I was a Zionist. I was in the Rabbanim. When I was about to get married, my wife and I, Debbie, were thinking of changing our names to a Hebrew name. We had a list of names. Ben Gurion was a Green. He wasn't related. I don't know what it was. Greenbaum, Greenberg.
Looks like that a lot.
Yeah, and I called my dad. I had a lot of respect for my dad. He said, don't change the name from what it was, because they're a family in Israel by the name of Grenimann. It's a respected from family, and you're living in a Jewish country, you should feel free to use the name. So I honoured my dad's wish.
In the movie they talk about, correct me if I'm wrong, John, Noremenko. That was the name of the brigade he set up in the fight at Nakoma. I knew I had something with it then. Nakoma. You tell listeners why he chose that name.
Well, Nakoma in Hebrew and Nakoma in Yiddish, the same word, means revenge. And they chose that name because that's what they wanted. The unit was disbanded by the Stalinist orders, by the local commissar after a number of months. They said, you guys are causing more anti-Semitism. And they took weapons away from some of the people. My dad was transferred back to the command post with Colonel Markov. And some of the guys in that unit left and were slaughtered. They never made it. There was a guy called Yaakov. I don't remember his name. He was the head of the Jewish police in Vilna who escaped.
Yeah. I heard some of them actually went to...
lost their lives.
I heard that some of them from that unit actually went all the way to Berlin and near the last days of Berlin. And they survived the war too.
Yes. After all, after that, the movie proceeds to show Boris's... how he sets up the Katzetler, the partisan movement in Melbourne. And it's got some beautiful footage, and I remember this when I was a kid attending the Melbourne Jewish Cemetery there in Parkville each year. Yeah, and it shows footage there of the late Rabbi Chaim Gutnick addressing a big crowd to remember the uprising of the Warsaw Ghetto and Holocaust Day. They combined it. And your late father was a big macher in this, to run this each year and continue to run it for many years at the Melbourne General Cemetery in Carlton there. And then he goes on and has a lot to do with the Katzetler meetings around Melbourne. They show footage of the early fundraisers for Israel and the balls, and it was a society, and they had quite a big following at one stage, and the film brings this all out to trace how he stood up and he wasn't a bystander, and he continued. And behind the partisans comes in this the link with the Nazis on board that same ship that your parents.
One small correction. Katzetler Verband was the organization of ex-concentration camp inmates and partisans. There weren't that many partisans. There were a couple, few. My friend David Zinger's father was a partisan, I remember. Okay. There was a lot of material for the film that it doesn't go in. There were 90 hours. Wow. And so it was an hour and a half. Yeah. And then on TV next year it'll be two-part documentary. So it's a little more. But there's a scene where they meet in my brother Jack's living room for a brunch, Sunday brunch, and my friend Steve Wagan remembered just the first time they brought ashes from Europe to be buried in that cemetery. He remembers how emotional people were. I don't think my dad brought us. I don't remember going.
We lit candles for the. I lit a candle. I was the youngest. I think you lit a candle next to me too.
So my memory's not so wonderful.
We were the youngest. And
it was a traumatic event. Steve remembered people crying. They didn't have graves, so they had the possibility of burying a few ashes there. And my dad was the one who organised that.
Yeah. I was about 6 or 7 or something.
The publicity says, and I'll quote, when 3 Melbourne brothers, Jack, John and Sam, stumble upon a family secret, they embark on a journey to uncover the truth. How did you stumble on the secret? And what is the secret?
Well,
the secret's in the film. You must go and see the film. If not seen the film, you must find the book.
It boils down to this. They hire, in the movie, he played a private investigator from Sydney. I forgot the chap's name. He was
John.
Yeah, he was in the police force. John Garvey, yeah.
Lovely guy.
Has a leading role in the movie because gets some information and, all told, there were, according to some figures, 800 alleged Nazis and Nazi collaborators in Australia at that time.
Mass murderers.
Correct.
No one was ever extradited. No one was ever put on trial. There was a commission set up, I think, under Bob Hawke, and they found that something like 600 of them were either dead, had either committed suicide, or just disappeared.
640.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a huge number.
Extremely large.
It was worse in the United States. They had thousands of Nazi collaborators, including the well-known Werner von Braun, who was developed their space program. And he used to send rockets over to kill people from Nazi Germany. Anyway, that's another story. The publicity also says, allegedly, their father Boris, a World War II partisan and Holocaust survivor, travelled from Melbourne, where he had settled after the war, to Sydney in the late 50s to undertake a revenge killing against the Nazi. What do you know about that?
Well, I said earlier, writing my first novel jogged my memory, and then going to East Europe added to that. And I told Jack that I remembered. Sam has a wonderful, strong memory like my mum. And I'm a little vague, so what I do to fill in the gaps is make up stories. That's why I'm a writer, right? I know he went on to Sydney. I know he was to Sydney. I know they found an unidentified body, and I know that there was a lot of talk about some Nazi that had gone to Sydney. In the film, we discovered that it wasn't about one guy. It was a lot bigger than that.
And in the movie, also your Uncle Fimmer, being an explosive expert, is linked with some of these alleged murders as well, because one of them commits suicide. There's the evidence shows that the autopsy shows there's an explosive on his head or something. That it's like
It was blown off.
There you go, yeah.
That was funny.
But
it was suicide.
that's what they recorded. A lot of it
down. So he suicide. I don't know how he did it.
Detective John says these are very strange suicides. Very strange.
The movie shows the exact what's written in the records, how these Nazis were killed or suicide cases, and there's a lot of mystery about it, isn't there? Which you've got to see the film to really appreciate it.
How did Danny Ben Moshe become involved? Did you approach him or did he approach you?
My brother Jack approached him. Jack was the locomotive to have this film happen. And the story that I heard, and I was in Jerusalem, I think Sam wasn't there, there was a party in Balnarring. Jack has a place in Balnarring. And Danny crashed the party. And they had a conversation. And later on, they swapped phone numbers or something. Later on, Jack contacted Danny and said, I'd like to find out more about my father. You're an academic. You know about that kind of research, historical research. Maybe you'll help me. Can we finance someone? Do you know someone to dig around more? Danny thought about it, got back to Jack and said, look, a lot of people ask me about films. But you're not asking me about a film, but I think there's material for a film. Let me pitch it, see if we can get some money to make a film about this. And he did finance a researcher, and the researcher came back and said there's a lot more to this than
Danny Ben Moish is quite a talented lad. He's an associate professor at Deakin University in Melbourne. Some of his other movies include that famous one that I love, The Outback Rabbis. Brilliant movie. Show on Bollywood, The Untold Story of Indian Cinema. He did that about 10 years ago.
I recommend that one.
Yeah, you were telling us before the show, a great comedy, especially this time of the year when we need a bit of a distraction. He did My Mother's Lost Children some 6 years ago. He did a few documentaries about the Adas Yisrael, the big stories, their closed society and their different world. He did a couple about Jewish life in Melbourne during COVID. And he's
a well-respected researcher.
Not only here, but overseas as well. And at one stage, I was mentioning to you, gentlemen, he was chairman of the B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation Foundation or Society, and he was presented with the Commonwealth Centenary of Federation Medal for leadership against and research into racism in Australia back in 2001. He did a documentary about the Buchenwald boys, about how they survived after the Holocaust. And another movie he did was The End of the Rainbow. You heard of that one? That was screened on ABC television in Australia some 13 years ago, about live music. So he's done in Melbourne about the Rainbow Hotel, Sam. Remember that famous pub in Fitzroy? Yep, and we give him a big shout out. No, I went there many times to see some good bands, and so
he also ran some problems with the Chinese. He made a film about the Chinese student rebellion.
Massacre Square.
Yeah, and I think people were interviewed, they covered their faces so they wouldn't get in trouble, and apparently they contacted him and threatened him. It's way back, but yeah.
Well, the film is showing at the Classic Cinema in Elswick every day.
It's a classic, isn't it?
And it's also showing at the Ritz Cinema in Randwick at 4:10.
Yep.
And at 4:30 at the Classic in Elswick, and it's on tomorrow, Sunday, Tuesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Saturday. So it's on 3 or 4 days a week. You'll have to look up the exact times. Have you had any reaction to the film yet?
Yes.
No contact.
I was in a meeting yesterday, my wife and I, with people from the local shul. 20 people were there, and a few of them had seen the film, and they said it was incredible, and they were moved by it. I got together with some mates from Melbourne High for breakfast the day before, and one of them says to me, my friend, I think it was Michael, Goldberg says, my friend George Olstein here was sitting in the cinema with tears in his eyes, and George comes up to me with his phone and shows me a picture of a forest that looks just like the forest that I'd gone to with the film in Ponar. Says, yeah, that's where my family was buried when they were murdered by the Nazis. So the film was people felt a personal connection with the story. And I've already been here a week, a number of people tell me, I think my dad was involved in something like that too. So it was a lot bigger, and it was very much covered up, understandably covered up. Then I remember.
Well, why do you think it was covered up?
Well, I mean, knocking off Nazis, it doesn't look so good to the regular Australian. I mean, you're killing people there, right?
You're taking justice into your own hands.
Not many people knew that there was a resistance at all.
No, not in Melbourne. The younger generation would not No.
Just keep quiet, won't you?
I can add a little history. Sorry, interrupting.
By all means.
A little history. There's this fellow called Abba Kovner, who was the leader of the Vilna ghetto underground. And he fled to the forest when they liquidated the ghetto and set up another partisan group. Abba Kovner and our dad were buddies. Abba Kovner was someone who pressured the Mossad to chase after Nazis, and he probably has a background to them helping Eichmann in Argentina. We found there was correspondence between partisans around the world, ex-partisans. They knew each other in different places they lived. My dad got letters from a buddy, Kaczynski was his name, in Buenos Aires, about the Nazis infiltrating the police in Argentina, and we have records of speeches he made in a Kazettenverband saying we're going to stop the Nazis before they get off the ground here in Australia. So not just justice or revenge, but also prevention or protection of the Jewish community into the future was what this was about.
How relevant is this today, Gary, when we have these, luckily we have these laws that have come in, banning the Nazi salute and sale of merchandise eventually is going to be tightened up. But it's a never-ending battle, isn't it, to combat these things?
For every generation we have people uprise and we have to put them down. That's it.
This is 10K Radius on 88 FM, J-Air, and we're talking about the film Revenge, Our Dad the Nazi, with Yehiel Grenimann and his brother Sam Green.
Freedom must prevail.
I'd like to give a short plug to my new novel.
Yes, it's called The Partisan's Coat.
I have to pay for it.
The Partisan's Coat. Yeah, tell us about it.
I pressured the publisher to get it out in time for the film, thinking the film was a marketing opportunity. And you asked earlier whether I came out for the film. That was the original plan. But there were two other reasons. One was the book, The Partisan's Coat, which is up on Amazon now. Mazo Publishers, M-A-Z-O, is a publishing company, American. And it's available now in two bookshops, Jeffries in Glenira Road and Avenue in Glen Huntly. And the third reason is a consequence of what happened in Israel now. We almost cancelled the trip because I've got kids there in bomb shelters and felt needed. But one of my kids got up and joined the evacuation of Australians. He has Australian citizenship and came here. So then, okay, I've got a son and 3 grandchildren who just arrived in Melbourne, and Jack has been wonderfully hospitable, but I felt like they might need a little grandparent support as they're trying to get a job set up. So that's another reason I'm here.
Fantastic.
And what, you came out from Israel before October the 7th or after?
No. We were there on October the 7th. In our building, we emptied all the junk out of our bomb shelter, moved our chairs from the sukkah into the bomb shelter. There were 3 azakot, what do you call them, 3 alarms in Jerusalem. Jerusalem hasn't had a lot, and all the people in the building went down to the bomb shelter until they got the all clear to go out again. We had my son from Beersheba bring his wife and 3 kids that were living with us for the first week of the war, and we went out with El Al. Other flights were cancelled. In fact, the other reason we were traveling is a family wedding. My wife's American in the States, in Philadelphia.
Neri's the boy who came out. His children are 3.5 and 2 and 7 months or something. When they first came out, the kids were traumatized from all the activity. And he got them out quickly. He made the mind up to get the flight, and he came out just in time. We're looking after him because part of the family. Family that sticks together.
Yeah. And we're planning to go for school. That would be wonderful.
What are our plans to return home?
We're planning to leave as scheduled, all things being well, in a week's time. 13th of November, we're flying home again.
And Neri, when it's peace, we'll go back.
Yeah, the kids are older. Tamara is 5, Lilach is 3.5, and the little one is 8 months old.
We've only got a couple of minutes left before the hour.
Gary, we should tell the listeners about this. It's more than a thrilling documentary, but It begs the question, do you ever really know your parents' background? Especially in my case, my mother was the sole survivor from a family of 7 siblings. My twin sister died in Auschwitz, she survived. And Gary's similar stories. And
my grandparents immigrated from Poland before the war, but all the rest of their family were from Poland, around Częstochowa. They're no longer in existence. We realised 3 million Jews in Poland before the war and 3,000 afterwards. So there's a good chance they're all wiped out.
Yeah. How did you feel when you learned the contents of the book? Seeing it and the morality side. I want to ask you, first of all, Sam and then John.
I went through a process. I retired recently, but I was active. I'm a Masorti conservative rabbi. I was a congregational rabbi for a while, but for 12 years I worked for an organization called Rabbis for Human Rights.
I remember, yes.
And I have contact with Palestinians in the West Bank. We organized protection.
Interfaith type thing.
Multicultural stuff.
Doesn't work.
And I was challenged by the film, and in the end I say I'm proud of my dad. I was never in his shoes. I can't even imagine being in his shoes. But I think he did the right thing.
Yep.
If he did it, because there isn't conclusive proof. A lot of circumstantial evidence. Then he asked the audience in the last showing I saw how many people think he did it, and absolutely everyone lifted up their hand. Everyone.
It makes them feel good that someone's doing something.
Yes.
But it's a moral issue. Look, I really hit it off with the detective John. We went to visit him. The guy is, I think, a Philo-Semite. He had the history of Israel. He had the biography of Moshe Dayan. He knew a lot about this stuff. And he said to me, as the film was going, I really hope your dad didn't do it, because he really seems like a very decent fellow. And people speak highly of him. He was a watchmaker for 58 years in Richmond. And he had good relations with the police. Honest guy, all the rest of it.
I met him once at that shop in Richmond.
Yeah.
And what about the film?
I went to visit you, sir.
He got a big green watch.
Boris's brother, also a watchmaker, had a business a block away from one of the Nazi collaborators, also a watchmaker, who disappeared. There's a highlight of the movie as well.
We'll have to break for the hour, and I would like to thank Yehiel Grenimann and Sam Green for showing up in the studio and telling us about the film.
Thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome. Now we'll just break for the hour, and we'll be back after 11 o'clock.